Hey, everybody, and welcome again to another episode of The Cheer Guys. I am Daniel Satterfield, and we have an awesome episode today. We're continuing in our championship series, going over all of those college national champions that happened at UCA this year in 2022. And I am going to go ahead and give a shout out to our sponsors real quick. We're presented by Cheer and Dance Battles, competition company that it specializes in individual, group stunt, and partner stunt competition. You come in, you compete virtually from wherever you are at all over the world, and then you win money coming out of it. We want to highlight those individuals who are just super talented everywhere. Also brought to you by Coachable. It is the sports app for all sports. Coaches can monetize their knowledge. Your knowledge has value, so we want you to be able to reach any athlete anywhere that wants to reach it. Athletes, you guys can send your videos in to those coaches, and then they'll turn around and analyze what you send them and send it right back to you for an in-app purchase. So be looking for it. That's Coachable. You can go to coachable-app.com to check it out. Got an awesome episode today. We are joined by my partner and co-host, Mr. Chase Brett. Chase, how's it going, man? How are you today?
I'm good, Daniel. And yes, we're glad to be back here with another one of our episodes. It's a special edition. We're reaching out to the winners from the UCA College Championship from different divisions and talking to all these coaches. And we have another great episode today. Friend of mine, national championship coach multiple times on the co-ed and all-girl side, continuing the legacy, and also world-renowned coach and choreographer as well. And a good friend of mine, like I said, Mr. Mark Coleman. Thanks for joining us today, buddy.
Hey, super excited to be here, fellas. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we jump right into it, Danny.
We're going head to head. So Chase and I are really excited to have you here, man. I mean, it's
awesome.
It's been awesome to see. I'm a huge fan of Morehead State. Have been for over 20 years. What we want to do is just tell everybody really a little bit about you, like your career with Morehead State University, kind of where you came from, and your part in the program now.
Yeah, well, I'm finishing up my 9th season as a head coach, so just been super blessed to be here at Morehead State this long. Before that, I lived in Lexington, Kentucky for 17 years, kind of tracing back I was in Lexington because I was trying to cheer at UK. I was briefly a member of the White Squad there. When Jomo Thompson was on the team, Salim Habash was the head coach. Before that, I actually started cheering at Vanderbilt, which is where I went to school and got my undergraduate degree. I joke a lot of the time. I'm an engineering student. I have an engineering degree from Vanderbilt, but this is what I'm doing with it. Fortunately, there's a lot of physics in cheerleading, and a lot of times I start talking about angles and stuff in practice, and people kind of look at me, and I'm like, "Yeah, I'm a geometry person. Sorry, like I'm a math person." But yeah, I started cheering in college and Vanderbilt, and started doing UCA staff, and started kind of learning about UCA, and kind of found out about UK, got recruited by UK, ended up moving to Lexington, met a lot of friends there, and then started coaching. I taught gymnastics for a year, and then I started coaching All-Stars. When Brian Elza and Craig Monty is an alumni of Morehead State. He was the state director of UCA at the time, and so I was really good friends with them. And they offered me a job to coach Kentucky Elite, and that's how I kind of started coaching full-time in Lexington, working with mainly younger athletes. And then over the years, just kind of gradually worked up. I mean, I've always worked with any age group, any skill level, anybody who wants to, hire me or wants to bring me in and coach with their athletes. I've always been open to that. And early on, I was working with virtually every middle school in Lexington. A lot of I was coaching All-Stars mainly. It was Pee-wees then, but it's now Tinies and Minis, and it was junior prep at that time, and I know it's moved on to youth. But younger athletes, 6th grade and younger. Brian and Craig coached all the older athletes, and then I was living with Jomo and Salim. They were good friends of mine. Jomo was actually in my wedding, and then Jomo and I had some talks together, and we wanted to kind of do our own thing. Jomo had coached at Pep Club at one point, and he got approached by the owners at Pep Club, and so wanted to move into an ownership role. And so Jomo and I partnered together, and we became owners at Pep Club, and I coached there for 5 years, kind of continuing to work with younger athletes. And around that same time, I started, it's mainly because Jomo became the head coach at UK, and that opened up some opportunities. And one of those was working with Graves County. And that was a large co-ed high school team. started working with them in 2003, and worked with them for many, many years. They've, kind of were passed the torch from Christian Brothers. When Christian Brothers, people to keep up with the UCA large co-ed.
Christian Brothers. Now you're getting into like what I call like some of the pillars of the history of our sport.
Oh, absolutely.
The early 2000s.
Well, I'm a big cheerleading nerd, especially when it comes to UCA history. I mean, for many, many years, anytime it was on television, I would record it on VHS. I still have, and I'm also a pack rat, so I still have boxes of VHSs with every cheerleading.
That Christian Brothers Christmas tree pyramid, the pop up into it.
Oh yeah. I mean, the routines I've watched those routines so many times, just so influential, and like, I don't know if HD is just getting so much better. I don't remember the videos being that blurry, but like nowadays, I watch them and I'm like, I don't remember that video being that blurry, but a bunch of the videos are on YouTube. They're kind of like fuzzy copies, but yeah, no, I've studied those for years and recorded. Anytime cheerleading was on television, I would record it, watched it, and then being on UCA staff and then starting to coach. Like that's been always kind of been one of my philosophies, just try to study and learn, because, especially when I started choreographing routines and stuff, like, I had to learn that thing, I was on UCA staff, they don't really teach you a whole lot about choreography. And so I had to learn those things and study routines. And we did a lot of that. I got to credit Brian Ellis. I mean, when we were single guys in Lexington, we would go out and then we would come back and nerd out and watch cheerleading till like 4 o'clock in the morning and try to get ideas for all of our teams. And that's really where it started. Just like, I don't know if there's a lot of people that have watched more cheerleading like than I have. Like, I've spent hours and hours and hours just studying. Years later, I started moving into like NCAA Best of the Best. I used to sell the best of the best videos, so you get the top 3 teams in every division. But one thing that I've done too, like, I liked watching every division. I mean, because I think what a lot of people do, they go, well, who won that division? And they go watch the winner. But I mean, there's always stories. I mean, there's so many divisions, but you never know what happened. Teams like Morehead State, or that traditionally win every year. You may be getting a big part of the story by watching the team that won, but sometimes there's somebody that could have won that year that had a pyramid collapse, or a stunt that fell, or stepped out of bounds. One of the years that Christian Brothers lost. I mean, everybody talks about Craigmont in 2002 because they did ball up QPs and toss stretches, but Christian Brothers actually lost because they threw a basket toss in the back and the guy stepped out of bounds. And
the stunt, we were talking about this just like right before you came on. The most memorable stunt from Morehead that influenced me was the rippled full up to shoulder sit, pops up to the top, in I think 98 maybe. 90 is somewhere around there.
Was it the pyramid where they did it in the pyramid when they did it?
No, it was the ripple crossing the partner stunt.
Okay.
They started the routine.
I don't have that entire routine. It might have been 98. Like, a lot of the alumni reach out to me because I have such a large collection, and I'll post older videos of Morehead stuff that I have.
Yeah.
Some of it I still have on DVD that I haven't transferred to digital, but I only have part of that routine in 98. Cause like I told you I recorded things on VHS. Sometimes I would come in the middle of a show. So, you're like scrambling, trying to find a blank tape. I think
wording over stuff.
Yeah. Well, I taped over, like, I've got part of UCA high school, like, co-ed that year. Cause I was always trying to find Christian Brothers, always trying to find, Bowling Green, the top high school co-ed teams back then. I was always trying to, record them, but I think I recorded over part of it. So like, there's one division that's like a piece of a show, and then it breaks, and it's like in the middle of Morehead's routine. And so years later, one summer, I spent like 3 months converting all of my old VHSs to DVD, because I think it was my first son was born, and I was home taking care of him every day. And so I was like, busy watching my son, and I kind of had time that I wasn't able to do a whole lot of else. So I was just like, I bought one of those VHS with the DVD burners, and I just would pop them in, and I would sit there and watch them and feed my son and rock him to sleep, and then watch some more cheerleading. And so for about 3 months, I've converted the majority of my VHS collection to DVDs. And I found some of them, I'm like, like the middle of Morehead's routine, like I cut out. So maybe that was part of the ripple. 97, I do have. I have posted that recently, but 98, I don't have as much.
Well,
so
what gets me is you telling us about how much cheerleading you've watched. We're going. It is an explanation of your career, and where you've been as a coach of Morehead. So not fast forward a lot, but just to kind of come to here, like you watched all that cheer. You've been, the head coach at Morehead State.
Yeah.
Talk us kind of through this year's routine, the kids you have now, and winning at UCA a few weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the things about this year's routine that I was most proud of was that it all kind of came together. Every year I have ideas. We had a team meeting yesterday talking about next season. What are some of the goals? We're going to lay the foundation for next year for 23 now. Springtime's pretty much our grind time. And we haven't really had that. I mean, one of the things that COVID has deprived us of the last couple of years is we haven't had that like grind time really where the one focus, like, nationals is far enough away that we can focus on individual skills and getting better. And last season nationals wasn't until April, so we were in nationals mode until the end of the season. And then the year before that was COVID. Most of the spring was taken away from us. So it's been a couple of years since we've actually had that normal grind time. I mean, my athletes come in. I mean, one of the joys of coaching at Morehead State is, every athlete here is hyper driven. And so, I don't have to tell them to come into the open. We're in the practice room. Like one of the benefits that I have too is we have our own practice space. So 24 hours a day, my athletes can come in and stunt. Non-COVID, we had restrictions during COVID and stuff that made it hard. That's why a year ago was so tough, because we couldn't use our practice room. We were practicing outside. First time in my life that I kind of felt like a real coach, because I even some practices I brought a whistle because I've always wanted to have a whistle. I played, I was on a high school basketball team and a high school soccer team, and then the coaches always had whistles. And then, in high school and even going in the first part of college, once I'd realized that I didn't want to be an engineer, I wanted to be a teacher in high school because I was going to be a high school math teacher. But I was going to be a high school math teacher so that I could coach. And I was so looking forward to the day that I could have a whistle. So when we got outside a couple practices, I finally had a whistle. I was like super pumped to use my whistle. And then I didn't even use it that much. But, but so many challenges last year that made everything different. So we're really looking forward to this spring of working. But this season, we set goals, at the beginning of the year, and we worked toward those. One of those was the hand skis. We've almost done hand skis multiple times over the last few years. And, I was explaining to my assistant coaches this year because, that was something else that was tremendously helpful. I had Ian Grimes and Kayla Rucker, who were like assistant coaches that were really helping me, because for the majority of my career, I've had like seniors that were like interning that helped me out a little bit, or, I gave them some extra scholarship money to kind of give me an extra set of hands, but I've not had like adult help very much until this season. Ian started with me in the middle of last year, but then because of COVID and grades and defections, Ian actually had to compete last year with my team.
Wow.
While he was getting his master's. He still had some eligibility, and he was in school, but the goal all along was for him to be my assistant. But things happened. It was a tough year. We got into towards the end of the first semester, and then I texted him. I was like, I know this is not what you want to hear, but you need to get back into shape because I think we're going to have to utilize you. And, and he ended up, competing, and it was, I'm glad, but it was crazy. So, but I kind of lost my assistant coach there for a little bit because, then he became an athlete again. But this year I was able to have help full time, but skill wise, the hand skis, that whole basket sequence with where we like transition, like normally I try to find creative ways to save counts and make the routine flow by, having the baskets transition into the pyramid, or the stunt sequence transition in the baskets, or stunt sequence transition into the pyramid. And, obviously studying videos. I mean, a lot of this stuff has been, other elite teams that I've watched over the years, and things that, baskets for us I wouldn't say have never been a big weakness, but not like a strength. And this year our baskets were stronger. We had more flexibility, to be able to, have people in one basket transition to another basket and still be able to make all the things work. You got to have the athletes to do it. And so this year, incredible athletes. Our top girls this year were just amazing. We have strong guys, and we've always had great athletes, but just like the depth of skill that we had this year was pretty amazing. And it allowed me, to do things that I've wanted to do, or ideas that I've had, but haven't been able to implement because, sometimes I have like this mid layer that I have to do, but maybe she can do this basket and this top girl can't, and this tippy can do baskets, but this one can't. Like all my top girls this year, all my mid layers could do things. So it really opened up, pretty much had a clean, like a blank canvas. And I was able to really put every idea that I've been kind of holding on to or things we tried to implement and put it together. And I was really proud. I mean, I think the routine that we put out this year, I mean, I always try to make my routines flow, and I always try to make them cohesive and try to make them fast paced. But I was really, really proud of how the routines came together and the skills that we were able to do and do well. I was really proud of. And so, the basket sequence was kind of a culmination of 2 or 3 years of ideas and really, having the skills of the people that could, execute
taking
it.
all of that pent up pandemic energy and everything and throwing it all into this one routine that kind of do that.
Well, and last year we didn't win, at either team, and it was devastating. My all-girl routine had a pyramid, mess up in like the last 3 seconds of the routine. I told them to, don't take anything for granted, finish the routine, wait till it's all done. I don't know what's happened. I in my mind, I'm like, hey, we're gonna, like, I wasn't saying we're about to hit. I was like, we could hit. Like, I wasn't taking anything for granted in the pyramid collapse. And, it was just gut wrenching of how it went down, just given the year too. I mean, we had, like I said, most of the year, we didn't even get to practice. We didn't even get to do pyramids until Christmas. We didn't have full practices where people could mix until second semester, till basically February. So, I mean, it was a very, and we weren't the only team that went through that, but it was just a really, really challenging year. And so to be so close, both teams, co-ed, we lost, we had a safety violation and 2 bad pyramid bobbles. If, we had 3 mistakes, one of those doesn't happen, we win. We were so close on both regards. So, people were like, well, are you super motivated now? Both teams lost. I'm like, man, I'm super motivated regardless. Like, I don't like to lose, period. I don't care. Obviously it's not all about winning. There's things are way more important, but I didn't come to Morehead to lose.
Right.
Right. Yeah. No kidding.
Yeah.
Well,
they didn't hire,
that's a great testimony for our viewers to hear a coach of such a winning program to talk about the utility cheerleaders made your vision and your dream of that routine this year possible, because they were so interchangeable. And that's what we all look at for athletes, is somebody who can step into whatever position I need you to and be successful because you have a high cheer IQ. That's what coaches are looking for, especially at the college level. So that was a great testimony. You were talking about all these challenges. I want to get your opinion really quick on, let's talk about the philosophy of coaching, not only during these times with all these challenges. How do you do, this is kind of a 2-part question. How do you keep them motivated and positive during all this? But at the same time, you're dealing with a lot of different things where you have to look at them and go, hey, we got to suck it up and push through. So there's 2 different ways there.
Yeah. Well, and like I said earlier, people come to Morehead, they know what they're getting into. They're coming here for a reason. So they're, obviously super skilled, but hyper driven. We have a very competitive atmosphere, very, where you're going to be pushed and challenged. And I think the athletes that do well here thrive off that. It's one of the things that makes my job so exciting, to get to work with those types of athletes. And you sent me the questions before I was looking at, sometimes, obviously they're college kids. It's this generation. They're not 100% focused all the time. What's my philosophy? How to combat that. I'm a positively motivated person personally. Everybody's different. When I'm coaching, I try not to use a broad brush just because, this is what's worked at Morehead, or this is what worked. This is how it worked with the team last year. Every team's different, even though some of the people might be the same. Every athlete's different. Everyone has their own personal backstory. Everyone's motivated different ways. So I just try to appeal to them and their competitiveness and tell them, we need to have urgency, and props to the teams that we compete against in our division, because they're all incredible too. So, if they don't, we don't talk about other teams very often, but they know that we have to be on our game and we have to be really, really good, or we're not going to achieve the goals that we want to achieve. But mainly just try to, get them dialed into hey, I know you feel like, we keep countdowns at 2-a-days. Nationals is 37 days away, but we're going to snap our fingers and it's going to be here. So we need to be on our game now. And, going back to you were asking about the routine this year, one of the things that I'm really proud of is we went 12 days without going full out because of COVID. We had five performances that we had alternates fill in the routine, and we had parts of the routine that did not get to run. Our M pyramid with like the tower fall and all that, we didn't run that for 12 days because we had people in quarantines, we had positives, we had people that were quarantined because of positive people in their pyramid, and then they retested after 5 days, and then they were positive, and so then they were out, for another 5 days. So that going into that last week, like that, the second to last week, the last week, like the actual week of nationals is usually, we perform and we like maybe have a short little, practice where we would try to clean things up or talk about the performance. But we had showcases where we need buses. So we were traveling almost every single day leading up to nationals. So there wasn't a lot of practice on that week. And we didn't have a real true full out until we went and performed at Bartow High School on Friday, the day before nationals. And that was the first real full out where everything ran since a week before Saturday when we performed at a basketball game. And so we missed like an entire week of 2-a-days. I mean,
now your juniors are going to be like, so coach, next year,
yeah,
maybe we should just take 12 days,
Yeah.
Do we have to go full out, coach?
Yeah.
I'm sure they'll be like, hey, it worked for us last year. We
right.
don't have to do all this. But no, I'm really proud because, this every year, I guess going back to coaching philosophies too. I mean, one of the things that I try to do is get better every year, and we had coaching meetings yesterday to discuss last season, talk about next year. I had meetings with the teams to talk about next season, ways that we feel like, there's a coaching perspective on things. There's an athlete perspective on things. I have assistant coaches that were athletes for me recently. So that's helpful to they can see both sides of it. But you guys know from coaching, like it's a totally different viewpoint than it is to being on a team. And you've
got to set. A lot of people don't take. So I'm a sports medicine guy. My background is in sports medicine, and so I look at things from a timeline perspective a lot of times, and the periodization of the team. So we're going to set up our entire cycle based on what phase we're in. So if we're looking at this is our, like we have an off season, we have a summer, we have a fall, and you have just this build up to your peak of your athletes, then you come down. So in this part of your season, and just kind of moving right along in conversation, you started in on the next question was, what's the next step in the future of the program for you, for your assistants, for your athletes, or like how many seniors are you losing? Versus now, like, what do you have to replace to kind of move forward into next year for the future? Like, what are you looking at doing? And then how, as far as that?
Well, my wife's going to think I'm crazy. One of the things we're looking at doing is starting a small co-ed team. And trying to have 3 competitive teams. I mean, I've been talking about it for a while. One of the things financially, that's the biggest hurdle, like, under being able to afford things. One of the things that I did this year for nationals, we actually took almost every single athlete to nationals, and Morehead has never done that. And so before I jumped in and tried to start a third team, I wanted to see like, well, can this program financially afford to do that? Because we would have to take, with the numbers increasing again next season to 20, we would have 60 athletes. Now, alternates don't pay any less to go to nationals. So if, we took a bunch of alternates this year. So we took 65 people to nationals this year and paid for all of them to go. And we'll see, we still have to have our spring clinics do pretty well, but I think that we financially can afford to do it. And I'm also trying to work on some other things about kind of helping, get some extra funding for our season next year. So I think financially we can do it. But, obviously the biggest piece of it is, do we have the athletes? And this year, I mean, I was looking at it a little bit going into the season, but, it's really challenging to find guys nowadays. I mean, I feel like every program, and we were taking 22, 23 guys, by the time we'd get to the fall, we'd have at least 20 guys on co-ed. And, it's been like 15, 16, and 2 of my guys this year, one of them had wrist surgery and another had ACL surgery. So I had 2 guys that weren't even medically cleared at the beginning of the year. So, we didn't really have the guys to do it this year, but I'm hoping that we can, if we have a good turnout at our clinics, and I feel like we have the guys in place. We absolutely have the female athletes.
And you're bringing up stuff. You're talking about stuff that I love that we're putting on the show from a national championship collegiate point of view for everyone who's listening in the cheer world to kind of understand. When we're talking about future, a lot of people think, oh, what new skills are you going to do, or how are you going to choreograph and do that? No.
Program.
We're talking about the program. You're talking about like the real challenges that you face as a head coach and as someone who's over an entire spirit program. Like, hey, we've got to have finances, we've got to have healthy athletes, and we got to have enough people, which what that does is I hear so many high school athletes who are talented, like super talented high school athletes, who will say things like, well, they're really good, and I just don't know that I could go on a team like that. And we're talking kids who are in all-stars throwing double fulls, whip punch doubles, whip punch fulls, stuff like that. And they go, in college, that's just a really good team. And I'm going, are you kidding? They need athletes who can do that. So I'm glad you're bringing up all those aspects.
Yeah, no, male athletes in cheerleading, obviously what people see of Morehead, the majority of it would be like, oh, look, a lot of their guys have standing fulls and they're doing hand skis. I'm not that good. Well, not every guy, can do those things. Obviously, we love those skills, but Morehead is more about a mentality, like I said, more about having a competitive drive. I took some guys this year that at the beginning of the year couldn't even do standing tucks. Myron would haunt me if I let somebody compete. Having a standing tuck has been a standard for every athlete at Morehead State to compete and cheer games for almost 2 decades or more. There's been some minor exceptions, and the alumni still talk about it. So I would try not to do that, but I tell you what, at the beginning of the year with COVID and how many guys we lost last year, we lost 7 guys last year. So, this year, if we'd have lost 7 guys, we barely would have been able to field a competitive team. So, last year we had no alternates at nationals. So there are opportunities out there. And I go to a lot of these, you asked me one of the questions about recruiting. I try to go to every college combine. I go to high school nationals. We usually have a presence down at high school nationals where I take some of my athletes and we go down there and stunt with people on the football field to try to, reach out and see people and recruit athletes to come to Morehead because, especially, All-Star has so many athletes nowadays and they're super, super talented, and the emphasis is probably a little bit more tumbling. I know they're trying to bring some co-ed stunning back a little bit, but nobody's doing hand skis or, extended hands unless they're level 7, open teams.
Right.
But if you can tumble, there is a place for you to cheer. And me going to these college combines and talking to these coaches, there's places that have like amazing scholarships that are like begging to have people, and where their administrations are trying to like, hey, you're doing a great job with the cheer program. We even want more people,
Right.
And they're like, and some of these schools are like, kind of like Morehead, kind of in small towns, so we, like you're coming to Morehead, if you're a cheerleader, you're coming to cheer. You're not coming because we're a big university. You're not coming because we have this huge game day experience. You're not coming because we're in a big city where you can catch every latest concert. I have to drive 2 hours to Cincinnati or Louisville if I want to catch like the new concert, so or see a Broadway play or anything big like that. But
well, tell us this: if they're out there right now looking to try to get recruited, what's their best bet if they're in high school? Where do these coaches need to point their athletes, or where can these athletes just go on their own to try to figure this out?
I think it can be twofold. I have coaches that reach out to me. I guess it's threefold. Have your parents get involved. Obviously, if they're under 18 and they're living at home or whoever their caregivers are, they need to have that discussion together and be working on that step together. I tell athletes all the time, I think where you go to college is in the top 5 most important decisions you're going to make in your entire life. For me as a man of faith, it'd be like becoming a Christian, getting baptized, choosing the person you're going to marry, the decision like where you're going to live, the job that you're going to have, whether you're going to have kids. And then I feel like where you go to college, which very well could influence all of those.
Yeah.
Right.
All those things.
It affects all of those things. Wow.
And so I think it's obviously a seminal moment in somebody's life and a huge decision. And so, being very active, starting early would be the other thing. Like I'm getting contacted by more and more freshmen and sophomores in high school, which I think is great because that gives you time. The number one the number one piece of advice that I give when anyone ever comes, if you have the confidence to reach out to me and talk to Morehead, you're probably really, really talented, or you're very ambitious, which those are great. I mean, those are two of the necessary things. And you deserve to look at us. Come check us out. You know, again, I think people look at my all-girl team and they're thinking, well, I can't throw a full twisting rewind, or I can't do a running full, or, you know, I can't do all those crazy stunts that they do. But most of those girls couldn't either before they came. And the same thing with the handskis. Like, we've been working on handskis for years, training these skills for a long time. You know, many of them couldn't do them before they got here. But reaching out to the coaches, communicating and visiting it. And I tell them, like, okay, so if you're talented enough to look at Morehead State, then you have a tremendous amount of options. I mean, there are so many opportunities, and that's what I encourage them to do too. Talk to other coaches, visit other schools, go and get a feel, you know. And sometimes it's just like, maybe you don't find what you're looking for, but maybe you'll find out, like, well, I don't want that. And, you know, so like you can, you know, by the process of elimination, start to like widen your, or like, you know, laser your focus in on what am I looking for? What's the program that's best for me? What do I need, or what do I want? And the other thing that I tell them is, you know, think about the priorities. Like, obviously, Morehead, we have a winning tradition. You see the banners on the wall behind me. You know, that's a big part of our selling point, maybe the biggest. You know, everybody wants to win, though. But like, do you want to work really, really freaking hard? Like, do you want to be challenged every day? You know, do you want to be pushed? Do you want to live in a small town? Do you want to go to a university that's very, you know, a small mid-major university? Right. You know, what's important to you? Like, you need to prioritize, you know, do you want a scholarship? Do you want to compete? Do you want to try to win? Do you want to be able to do Team USA? Do you want to be at a big school? Do you want big game day? Like, do you need financial assistance? You know, are you willing to take out loans? I mean, I keep going back to money, but really, money's probably the most important decision, you know, that kids want to figure out. Like, fortunately, Morehead State University is very economical, and we don't have like true out-of-state waivers, but if you have half decent test scores and half decent, like a GPA, unweighted GPA in high school, you can get the lion's share of your out-of-state tuition in scholarships back. So Morehead is very economical. And often, you know, we'll have people that maybe Morehead wasn't their number one choice, but another school that they wanted, like a bigger school with bigger game day, was more expensive than they could afford. And so sometimes we'll get athletes because Morehead is economical.
That's all. Mark, when are your clinics coming up that people can show up at?
We've got 2 days of clinics on February, the 26th and the 27th, and then we have 2 days in March on the 26th and the 27th. And you can go to moreheadstatecheer.com. That's where all of our information and our registration link is up. You got it up on the website there. I see that.
Right there.
Awesome. That you can register there. You don't have to do both days, but we have different packages. You know, it's open to athletes 7 and up. So these clinics are not just for people that are interested in Morehead State, but if they are looking at us, or they're wanting to be recruited, or if they want to earn a bid to tryouts, then we absolutely encourage them to come, because it's a great opportunity, one, to visit campus, to meet people from the team, to meet me, you know, and kind of get a feel for the program, you know. And so we strongly encourage people to come to clinics. I mean, technically you could say that it's required, because you have to come to a clinic to get a bid. But, you know, sometimes people, I mean, especially in the spring, if somebody's still trying to figure out where they want to go to school, and let's say their all-star team, I got an email yesterday, their all-star team's competing both of the weekends that we have clinics. They just need to reach out to me, and either they can message me on any of our social media accounts, or they could email me. But our practices are always open. So anyone is always welcome if they want to sit in and watch a practice. COVID's kind of, you know, normally all they have to do is sign a waiver and they can practice with us. Now with COVID, they need to get like a negative COVID test within, you know, 48 hours. And then they can sign a waiver, and then they can practice. But we have athletes who do that too. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that they can make it to a clinic because they have conflicts with their own teams. I mean, you know, we always want, one of the things I you know, preach about is, you know, honoring commitments, you know. So I would never want somebody to, like, yes, college may be your future, cheering at Morehead State might be your future, but I don't want you to back out or, you know, hurt your team that you've already committed to, you know. So even sometimes with our tryouts are generally the first weekend of May. This year it's the 6th and 7th of May, which is, it's the first full weekend. But it's usually I think it's the weekend after Worlds. And so, you know, we've had people that couldn't make tryout weekends, so they can do a video tryout, or they show up a few days early. Like, I try to work with people, because I definitely don't want them to hurt a team that they've already committed to, you know, to kind of yes, it's their future, and technically, and according to them personally, it might be more important, but still wanted them to honor that. So we try to work with people.
Same
Yeah.
time, you don't want to miss out on those athletes, you know, if they
Yeah.
are committed to that
Right.
and
Yeah.
they have to make a decision, you don't want to miss out on a very talented athlete. So that's great, man. That's really smart.
Yeah.
Well, thank you
Mark,
so much
I mean,
today, bud. Yeah, go ahead, Daniel.
I'll say, yeah, thank you for coming on with us and talking. A lot of great information.
Yeah.
Congratulations on your win. I mean,
Thank you.
UCA, and was this, just so I'm clear, because I was looking at what you sent us and what we're looking at, is this 51 or 52?
What the university recognizes, it's 50.
This one-
It's 50. Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So that was pretty special for us.
Dude, well, I would say between all girl and co-ed, 50 national titles between all girl and co-ed in the last 3 decades.
That's amazing.
Yeah, and since 1988, yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
amazing. And,
Well,
There's the selling point. Well, hang out after we're done with the show. Let's chat a little bit more.
yeah, absolutely.
Afterwards. But again, man, thank you so much for joining us and taking your time out of your day to do this. I know our listeners
thanks for
and
inviting me.
viewers are going to love it, man. So
absolutely.
great.
Well,